So today on the Cento Leadership Podcast, I've got Brian Carras of Pelican, who are a specialist sales consultancy focused on the security industry, dealing with branding, sales, mergers and acquisitions. And we're going to talk today about the different types of individual that would fit a startup company as opposed to a bigger company, and how there is quite a significant difference, isn't there, Brian, in those types of people, where they feel more comfortable. What have you seen in your experience?
Yeah, great, and thanks for having me, Brett. Happy to be here. So I've done primarily startups for the last 30 years, a number of different spaces, but a big chunk of that in the security industry. And so I've done, again, a lot of startups, handful of like larger companies, and as you point out, like it's really different, the kind of people that are successful in both from what I've seen in a large organization where, in theory, if the company got to be that big, they've figured something out, right? Like once you're getting hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, you figured out product market fit, you figured out pricing and go to market and structure. And so what you really need is a team of people that can act as an army. You want your individual people, of course, to be independent thinkers and bring ideas to the table and all of that. But you really need them to execute a master plan, and sometimes execute a plan that they may not fully see all the parts of it, or those people might not be filled in on like where the company is and where they're trying to go, especially if it's a publicly traded company. It's just in a large organization, all that detail doesn't trickle down the same way. In a startup, it's oftentimes the complete opposite. You frankly haven't fully figured out that product market fit, that strategy. You're making everything up as you go. And so the kind of individual that you need there, and the kind of person that thrives in that environment, tends to be a very different kind of persona.
And then again, the term startup, I think sometimes that is quite attractive to people.
Yeah.
They think they want to go and work in a startup. They think they can go on this exciting journey, this accelerated journey. But as you say, when they get there, the structure, the processes, procedures aren't in place.
Yeah.
And that's quite often the bit that people got difficulty dealing with, or they're dealing with the lack of.
Absolutely. That's something I've seen time and time again. And, I lived myself in the early days, but when I've built multiple sales teams at startups, and you hire someone, and if they're not familiar with that, they'll ask, where is the warranty document? What's the return policy? All the stuff. And you're kind of like, good question. No one's asked before. We need to make it up on the fly. Or even more importantly, I found finding the right people are the ones that, when they're in front of a customer and they get a question or a request that they realize there's not a strict policy around that yet, and we need to develop it, being able to handle that on the fly, to kind of set the right expectations with the customer without overcommitting and not making it look like your company is so new that like you don't have a return policy yet. It takes a special skill set that you develop over time.
I think also it comes down to people's ability to make a decision on the spot as well.
Yeah.
If they're reluctant to make decisions, they're not a decisive character, then of course when they're put on that spot, they'll just try and back that off to other people. And again, I think in our experience recruiting for whether it be a startup, whether it be an established company, people going to a smaller SME startup business, they're also expecting the support structure around them, where there's always someone else to hand these sorts of things off to. Is that, again, something you've seen in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. And you're right, that ability to think on your feet and to set appropriate expectations with a customer, it's a hard skill to develop. It takes time. It's not something that's really like taught in an MBA course or something like that. You have to really get a feel for it, and you have to build. There's, I think, a lot more of a feeling of like camaraderie and trust that goes on in a startup, because you have to rely more so on your teammates, and there's not some other part of the company. I've seen, again, in large companies, too many cases. I think a lot of people have seen this, where like the sales team promises the world and they don't care, because once it's delivered, it's like it's the responsibility of the post-sales support team, and the sales team is onto something else. In a startup environment, more often than not, that pre-sales team carries over to post-sales, and they're the ones who have to follow through on the commitments they made. But there's also where you have an opportunity to build a really good reputation for yourself as a customer facing person, whether it's pre-sales or post-sales or whatever, and helping make those things come true, and delivering those promises you made to the customer.
And do you think that the sort of startup environment, startup people, when they're hiring for these roles, they make the mistake at the hiring stage by not asking the right questions or not testing the candidate enough to see if they're prepared for that, roll your sleeves up and the entrepreneurial side of things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've seen sales leaders coming into startups from other organizations, and they're recruiting salespeople, and they might do the typical like, hey, give me your 30, 60, 90-day plan, and tell me how you do this and do that. And again, those are very typical things when you've got an established organization, and like when you know that your company's got money in the bank for the next 90
Yeah,
days, and you can be thinking 90 or 180 or 360 days out. And of course, coming into a startup, you need a plan, but you need to be able to rapidly adapt. And so, if I'm interviewing people for those kinds of roles, I'm usually more focused on asking them, what have been your most challenging situations? What have been, tell me about your losses, tell me about your bruises and your scars and those kinds of things, because that's where you can more often, in my experience, figure out if someone has really like internalized those things and learned
yeah.
from it and said, hey, I really wish I had known this, or I didn't realize, that my company wasn't ready for this kind of commitment or phrasing to the market.
Yeah, it's resilience, isn't it? It's that resilience to take the knocks and go back and keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And a lot of people don't
Yeah,
have that these days, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah.
The other side, I mean, the AI subject always comes up as well.
Hmm.
And so if we look at that, because obviously you've got a lot of experience with AI businesses and software businesses, I think again to look at a sales team or a salesperson's approach to selling AI and software is completely different to selling a physical product. And again, this
For
is
sure.
where this can also start to go wrong.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing, AI to me, and I think this is true across the board for almost any AI product, but particularly in the security industry, AI, artificial intelligence, it's replacing some human operation or function or
Yeah,
process. So I use this example sometimes, like if someone's looking at a video surveillance system, they pretty much know that they have to put in cameras and recorders. They're not like, well, we'll give all of our employees a cell phone and ask them to like record their environment and like upload it to the Google Drive at the end of the day, or I'll hire someone to sit outside like an out of work sketch artist and like draw the scene once a minute or something like that. It's like your alternative to cameras is really there's really no logical alternative. You can't replace that with people. You're going to choose some kind of a product, but AI. This is software that I spend most of my time in video, machine vision, AI, video surveillance. But whether it's on the video side or the access control side, it's like we're asking software to replace or augment a human function. And so, like the
yeah,
very first thing that I see sales teams again often not recognize, they come into a company and it's an AI company, so there's a lot of hype, and the marketing people are in overdrive, and they're making all these big promises, and then a person who's not familiar with this might wonder why like they're not getting the responses to their emails, they're not getting interest from customers. And one of the things I figured out a long time ago is like if your customers aren't spending money on humans doing this function, they're probably not going to spend money on software to do the function.
no,
And because it's like, hey, if you're not watching a bunch of video, or if you're not searching a bunch of video, or if you're not looking for deep anomalies in your access control logs, like if you don't have that need today or you don't recognize it, you're probably not looking for AI software. And even if you think like, okay, these things are happening in my environment and I need to start to put these processes into place, if you still don't know exactly what you need and what you're looking for and like what you want to find, it's hard to evaluate AI software. So this is stuff that I found it's much more evaluated by the end user, by the customer, even if they don't realize it at first, that it's evaluated against basically how much human time can I offset, or how much more, how much more productive can I make my human operator. So you can't really sell on, I don't want to call it like the scare tactics, but a
no.
lot of access control and video is sold more on that like protection and security and those kinds of things. And the AI software I found is sold in just a very different set of circumstances.
And do you think that again, the big difference in selling AI software to a physical product is everybody's quoting AI at the moment.
Hmm.
Everyone's saying AI this, AI that, but nobody really understands what the uses, applications, and benefits could be. Again, coming back to if you're looking where you'd employ a human to
Hmm.
process, whether it's reviewing camera footage or so on, is getting the application right
Yeah,
helps with the sale. And then you've got
absolutely.
a lack of understanding on both sides, because nobody's an AI expert at the moment. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a minute someone thinks they're an AI expert, 30 minutes later they're not.
it's all changed for sure, for sure.
Everything's changing too
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah. So it's really, there's we hear that like AI is taking our jobs, and you kind of hear what's going on, but I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. AI is probably, it's not at the stage, and it's probably not going to be at the stage for quite a while where you're just going to like wholesale replace people
No,
with the software.
yeah,
But you will deploy AI where you see your people spending a lot of time, or you probably even more importantly, like wasting a lot of time. And this is where I think video surveillance, why it's been one of the leading applications far and away for AI in the security industry, is because we spend a lot of time with either people watching video, the live monitoring, remote monitoring market, or the investigative side.
yeah,
A lot of times, whether they're public police forces or like private investigative forces. I've had some, customers that they have an internal security team that rivals a small city. They have full-time investigators and so many employees in so many locations that stuff is always going on. And so they have teams of people going through video. Someone reports, my car was scratched and I think it might have been a hate crime. And so they got to go back and figure out, when did the car get scratched? Did it get scratched in our parking lot? Did it, was it another employee that had a beef with this
yeah,
person? And they got to, they spend a lot of time searching through video and things like that. Those are great applications for AI, because finding the video, finding the moment that the thing happened is probably the least important part of the whole process. Once you found it, now you have the context to figure out who did it, to maybe dig into why they did it, and things like that. So that's where that's where there's big applications for AI. But again, you have to look to where your employees are spending or wasting a lot of their time in their function today, and that's where maybe there's an application for AI. There's a whole lot of other stuff that we're not, certainly not there yet.
yeah. Because again, the other side suggested the SNG conference is the predictive side of AI on video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So where it can almost start to predict what may happen, and then
definitely.
that would then, the agentic side of AI would then trigger, building lockdown or whatever it might be, alerting, security guards, police, or whatever it might be. Do you think that's where that's going as well?
I think it's definitely where it's going. I don't know, probably 10 years or so ago, I was saying, as I was giving some talks on where the machine vision AI, the object recognition stuff was. I was saying that a lot of what the products were lacking was contextual understanding of the scene. A big market for that stuff, at least in the U.S., is car dealerships. There's theft of
Yeah,
airbags and catalytic converters and stuff at night. So, like, an older person pushing a baby stroller is probably not a threat. An average person walking across the lot at night is probably not a threat. Someone who's kind of moving around a little bit, suspiciously, and or carrying tools, like, that's a big threat. But all the technology could do at the time was like, to AI at the time, those were all just person object. They didn't
yeah,
understand the context of the person, the other things surrounding them. And now we're getting into that with some of these, LLM style models, where it's not, we can detect the person, but also ask the model to say, hey, what's going on in this scene? This location, this time of day, does this look normal or not? So we're starting to get into some of these applications where, people talk about the Minority Report movie, the
yeah,
predictive policing. I'm not sure that we'll ever get there, and I definitely don't think we don't want to be there. But in terms of prioritizing events for operators to look at, or prioritizing what gets automatically escalated to police patrols, I think we've taken a big leap forward in the last few years towards something like that. And we're starting to see companies not only talk about it, but actually deliver elements of that. The
yeah,
video analytics, the AI industry has always has always led with fantasy, but it's taken a while for a reality to be delivered. But we are seeing that now.
And when it comes back to, again, hiring sales teams that can sell that side of things, and again, that knowledge base isn't necessarily there, have you seen anything or have you delivered anything that where you can start to train maybe a physical product salesperson in thinking forward to be able to sell the AI software aspect?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. I found it's really important when customers ask for stuff because they don't always understand the AI and the capabilities, and in particular these days, I kind of feel like almost every company is saying like, we need AI. They don't know what, they don't know why, but the executives feel like if they don't have a story for their upper management and their investors and their board about how they're getting better with AI, that like their position is at risk. So it's like people want to deploy AI and they start asking about it. But you have to listen for sometimes the requests that are completely, I think, just still completely fantasy, or sound like someone who's read stuff online and is asking for something without understanding. Like I used to use the example, this is still relevant, but this example isn't as frequent. But with object detection AI, you'd have customers asking for object left behind. They were worried about someone dropping off a bomb or an explosive. I'm like, okay, that happens almost never. And when it does, it's not like a person is leaving this thing in plain sight. If they're even doing that, they would like leave it under a chair or throw it in a trash can. So it's like it's not that the threat isn't real, but it's so impractical to detect. So that was one of those early indicators to me that, like, when I had customers in a meeting saying like, oh, we want to see line cross and object left behind, and I'm like, okay, you read a checklist, but you haven't thought about how you're going to apply this to your environment. So that was usually a cue for me to kind of dig in and say, oh, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And then the next part of it is figuring out the value, because AI, the hardware is still expensive, whether it's cloud hardware or on-premise hardware. So it's like, okay, what is your problem? Is it solvable? And is your risk relative to your budget? Because if it costs me $50,000 to protect a $5,000 statue in front of your building that gets vandalized, it's like, just throw the statue out every time it gets vandalized and buy a new one. You're never going to make your ROI on it. So,
and again, with the security, the IT industry and the security industry, the lines have become blurred over the years. Do you see that accelerating over the next sort of 3 to 5 years, where more IT people will be coming over to the security sector and vice versa?
Yeah. One of the things that makes AI and some of these solutions so popular today is that they're very turnkey. They're very point and shoot. 20 years ago, setting up any kind of machine vision application required a lot of manual configuration and tweaking and training and like that. The specialists in white lab coats kind of vision. And now there's a million products that are just like, hook it up to any camera and it works really great out of the box. Or you make some very minor, you click more of this, less of that kind of stuff, and it works really well. So that's been great for promoting these products, but then that also means you don't necessarily need a machine vision video surveillance specialist to set it up. When you can buy the thing on Amazon, and a halfway decent IT guy or the smart nephew can configure it, it's a benefit for the application space at large, but it is a threat to security integrators if they can't adapt and show why they're the best choice for their customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, look, I really appreciate your time. If somebody obviously listening to this wants to get in touch with you, which is the best way to get in touch with you?
Email Brian at pelicanzero.com or find me on LinkedIn, Brian Cares. That's probably the easiest way to find me.